We all know the film industry struggles with diversity and representation. In the past few years, there has been progress made with movies like Black Panther and Get Out doing well. However, there is still a long way to go. The people upstairs, producers and directors and the like, behave as though this little bit of representation is enough. However, it is not, and this belief shows a misunderstanding of intersectionality. So, what is intersectionality? This is what the African American Policy Forum has to say. Intersectionality was initially conceived as a way to present a simple reality that seemed to be hidden by conventional thinking about discrimination and exclusion. This simple reality is that disadvantage or exclusion can be based on the interaction of multiple factors rather than just one. Yet, conventional approaches to social problems are often organized as though these risk factors are mutually exclusive and separable. That's a mouthful, but essentially, intersectionality refers to the fact that people can belong to more than one marginalized group and experience more disadvantages as a result. For example, young Black gay youth experience disadvantages for being Black, but also for being gay. This diagram illustrates that perfectly. These are the top grossing movies of 2019, up to September. According to Paste magazine, of the 9 movies, only 3 had POC main characters, and only 2 had a predominantly POC cast. I'm not counting Lion King because lions aren't people. The voice actors were diverse, though. None of the movies featured any Asian, Latino, or Indian characters, or any disabled ones. But that's just 2019. Let's do an overall look. These are some of the top grossing movies of all time in the United States. As you can see, even less movies have POC characters, and none have characters with disabilities, unless you count Dory's short-term memory loss, of course. There are movies with representation, but too often the characters ride on stereotypes or misconceptions. Black women are often portrayed as being crackheads.
What y'all smoking on?
Nothing, what you want? It's promiscuous.
What Debo doing over here?
Oh, he's there asleep with Felicia.
Felicia fucking Debo too?
Overly maternal.
What you doing hiding out here, girl? I just couldn't tell Mama I didn't get asked to the dance. It's all right. Some things we just got to keep to ourselves, right?
Patricia Hill Collins does a great job describing this in her book, Black Feminist Thought. She describes 2 stereotypes that media often portrays Black women as. The first one being the mammy. The faithful, obedient domestic servant created to justify the economic exploitation of house slaves and sustained to explain Black women's long-standing restriction to domestic service. The mammy image represents the normative yardstick used to evaluate all Black women's behavior. She also describes the Jezebel, or hot mama. With intersecting oppressions, Black women's allegedly deviant sexuality becomes constructed around Jezebel's sexual desires. Jezebel may be a pretty baby, but her actions as a hot mama indicate that she just can't get enough. Because Jezebel, or the hoochie, is constructed as a woman whose sexual appetites are at best inappropriate and at worst insatiable, it becomes a short step to imagine her as a freak. Movies like The Help, Gone with the Wind, and all Medea movies are examples of these stereotypes. Black men are depicted negatively as well, often being the thug, the rapist, or the deadbeat dad. These depictions are harmful for a number of reasons. For one, it oversimplifies social issues that are incredibly complex. There are reasons why there's more poverty among Blacks and an inflated amount of Black men in prisons. These movies ignore those reasons. Movie makers have the opportunity to do the Black community justice, but instead choose to perpetuate these harmful stereotypes. It's not just the Black community that experiences this either. Asians are often depicted as nail techs or restaurant owners. Indians are often cashiers at gas stations or corner stores. Latinos are often maids or thugs as well. These depictions give the idea that these are the only roles POCs can have. There aren't enough movies with a person of color as a lead where the movie isn't about being a person of color. These movies do have value, however. It's time that we have a movie with a lead that just happens to be a person of color. It seems that when there is a chance to cast a member of a marginalized group as a lead role, it's given to a straight, white, cis person. There's nothing wrong with this per se, but, well, Trevor Noah does a great job explaining this in his show, so I'll just let him speak.
Someone like Scarlett Johansson sometimes I think doesn't understand, like when you read a quote like that, you go, no, people aren't attacking you for this. They're just saying, you have the luxury of all of these roles and the roles that these other people will never be considered for. You can play a Japanese robot if you want to, and you can play a white woman in Avengers, a white woman in a romantic comedy, a white woman in action, a white woman in a drama. You can play all of them. But the Japanese woman who's acting, she most probably can only play the Japanese robots.
Lack of representation does a disservice to consumers on so many levels. For one, it sends the idea that only certain people belong on screen, that only some stories deserve to be told. In her TED Talk, The Danger of a Single Story, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie says this about her roommate's perception of her. My roommate had a single story of Africa, a single story of catastrophe. In this single story, there was no possibility of Africans being similar to her in any way, no possibility of feelings more complex than pity, no possibility of a connection as human equals. This applies to all marginalized groups in America. Despite the knowledge that film is fiction, we still base our understanding of groups on what we see in movies. And this can be incredibly harmful for some groups, like those with disabilities. Many movies about disabled people portray them as these weak, self-pitying individuals, when that couldn't be farther from the truth. This causes audiences to get the wrong idea, and can affect the way able-bodied people interact with the disabled. Autistic writer, performer, and disability justice advocate Gabe Moses says, I believe the narratives being spread around about self-hating disabled people are directly responsible for the number of people tasked with supporting and representing us who think the best way to do that is to try to bend us to fit into this inaccessible world rather than bend the world to be accommodating to us. Movies that wrongly depict other minority groups have this same effect. They cause people who don't have first-hand experience as a member of a marginalized group to get the wrong idea, and it affects the way those groups are treated in the real world. So how do we fix this issue? Well, for one, stories about minorities need to be written by minorities. Most people outside of minority groups have no idea what it's like, and therefore can't do those stories justice. Minorities need to be considered for more roles that have nothing to do with being a minority. The film industry has come a very long way, with recent films like Moana, Coco, Us, Widows, and many more. However, it still has a long way to go.